welcome to the stage, Hamish Mackenzie.
Thanks very much, Lucian. Whether you're starting your day, just finishing it, or somewhere in between, welcome everybody. My name is Hamish Mackenzie, and thank you for joining us for this next session at IIoT World AI Frontiers Day 2025, which is entitled Wiring the Factory Brain, Building Real-Time Data Architecture for Industrial AI, sponsored today by Cirrus Link and aicas. Please feel free to put in the chat where you are, who you are. It's always good to get a feel for who's joining us. While you do that, just a couple of housekeeping points from my side. As I'm sure most of you know, it's an hour-long session. We'll try and finish a couple of minutes early so you get ready for the next session. I'm going to introduce the topic, introduce our fabulous guest speakers, and we'll be getting lots of valuable insights from them, of course, but then we're going to leave some time at the end to take some questions from you, who ultimately are the most important people in the room, because you are why we're doing this. So we are going to do that. Please get your questions into the Q&A function in the platform. We'll put them in the chat because we might miss them if you do that. So get them in the Q&A function. You don't need to wait till the end. As soon as you think of something, get it in there, and that'll give us a nice broad set of questions that we can get to as many of as possible at the end of the session. All right. So I think we all understand that AI can't deliver the insights that we want from it and expect from it without fast, contextual, and connected data. And so this session is really going to focus on the foundational infrastructure that makes intelligent operations possible. And that means from MQTT-based unified namespaces to real-time data modeling at the edge and at the cloud, in the cloud rather. And we're going to learn how manufacturers design data systems that feed AI with the precision and context it needs to drive that operational value that we're all looking for. And especially in terms of adapting to change. And we all know that change is happening at an ever-increasing rate right now. So that's what we're going to be covering. Let me introduce our speakers to you now. First of all, we have Dr. Angela Zeng, who's founder and CEO of Carviva, a multi-award-winning wellness beverage brand blending Eastern medicine and modern nutritional science. She has a PhD in pathology, an MBA, and she's been pioneering clean label functional drinks through scientific research and entrepreneurial innovation since the launch of the company. And her team are really applying AI in product development, sourcing, operations to meet those evolving consumer demands and manufacturing demands as well, of course. And she's also been recognized as one of USA Today's top 10 women leaders to watch in 2025. And she's also a Titan 100 CEO honoree as well. So fantastic that you're joining us today, Angela. Next, we have Arlen Nipper, who is president and CTO of Cirrus Link. He has over 40 years of experience in SCADA and industrial systems, and he's co-inventor of MQTT, which, as I think most of us know, is the leading messaging protocol for IoT. He's an early pioneer of pervasive computing and the Internet of Things, and he's held leadership roles over the years at Amoco, Koch Oil, Arcom Control Systems, and Eurotech. He has a BSEE in electrical and electronics engineering, even from Oklahoma State University. So thank you very much for joining us, Arlen. Next, we have Bernd Gross, who is CEO of Cumulocity, and he has over 30 years of international industrial leadership experience in digitization, IoT, cloud, and Industry 4.0. He co-founded Cumulocity in 2012, which was later acquired by Software AG, and served simultaneously as CTO at Software AG and CEO of Cumulocity. Last year, Bernd and the management team bought back Cumulocity as part of a management buyout. So that's what they're engaged in growing now. They're a leading player in AI/OT domain already, with over 1,000 customers in more than 20 countries. And he has a master's in ICT and an MBA from London Business School. Thank you for joining us, Bernd. Then we have Johannes Biermann, who is president and COO of aicas. He leads aicas' scaling strategy, and aicas solutions connect over 31 million embedded edge devices and vehicles in 2025. He focuses on embedding aicas into the fast-moving edge embedded ecosystem through partnerships and go-to-market collaborations. He has 30 years of experience across strategy, consulting, product management, and operations. And he's worked in the past at Hewlett-Packard and Siemens, and he's very active in transatlantic business and academic networks as well. So great that you're with us as well, Johannes. And finally, a few words about me. Hamish Mackenzie. I'm a former IDC analyst, and I've been running my consulting, advisory, and coaching practice from Munich, Germany since 2006. So on multiple aspects of go-to-market strategy for deep tech startups and scale-ups, providing them really with as much focus and clarity and execution leverage as they need to turn those complex technology products and solutions they have into reliable growth. So that's what I do. If you'd like to know more about me, look me up on LinkedIn. Shouldn't be too difficult to find me. I'm the only Hamish in Munich as far as I know. So with that, make sure you get your questions into the Q&A function, and let's get started. Just before we get into the conversation, I want to bring up our first poll question. If the team can bring that one up for us. Coming up any minute now. I don't see it yet. Do any of you see it?
No.
Okay.
I can see the poll, yeah, in the chat.
Oh, you can see the poll.
I can see the poll
in the chat.
In the chat, yeah.
Yeah, but it should come up on the screen.
Can you bring the poll?
Should come up on the screen.
All right, so I'm being told that he started it, so I'm hoping if someone in the end.
Right, there it is. Oh, okay. Here we go. So I guess it did show up, just not for us. So anyway, there's the results, and there's a couple of people still answering. So it seems like the biggest barrier to scaling industrial AI at the moment for most people seems to be the legacy IT/OT systems, which were not built for an AI world. So maybe, guys, you can kind of bear that in mind as we get into the questions now, and maybe there's a few comments you want to make about that, whether that reflects your view and experience as well. All right, let's get started. I like to start off with a bit of context and to really just try and set the scene a bit. So, Bernd, I wonder if I can come to you first. A lot of people think and assume that industrial data is very valuable for training AI models. So, from your perspective, is this actually true?
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you very much for being here and being able to have the panel discussion with all of you. Really looking forward to it. And yes, the question is very strategic, knowing that training AI data is becoming extremely valuable. I don't know if you heard about acquisitions of companies just to get AI relevant data to train them. So really companies acquiring other companies for AI sensible data, which is quite amazing. And it's not about their revenues also, it's just really to help better train their AI agents. So it's a very important topic to in the industrial environment to be able to make use of that. Of course, that's a business opportunity, right? So think about selling AI training data anonymously, obviously, but helping really to improve models with that. And the question in that sense, I think it's to me really important. And we all are long enough in the business that we know that just raw data is not doing the trick, especially in the AI environment. I think you mentioned that, Hamish, even earlier in your introduction, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah. I see that more often than not. I mean, that's the unfortunate situation is really in my daily engagements with clients and so on. I see a lot of people really in a positive intention to store data and to hope these data is becoming valuable, but they are missing actually to put context to it. For example, really to describe the asset hierarchy of a production environment, for example, like factory name, asset line, machine, sensor, pressure, or whatever. These kind of typical hierarchies which you need is super important also in the AI environment. But in addition to these hierarchies, which you are more familiar probably in the industrial setup, what is even more important at the moment is that it is also meaningful and overlaid contextually with business data, right? And I think this is now becoming really, really important for AI models. Because if you, let's assume a machine is not working, if you do not know the context, is the machine in maintenance mode? Is it a failure? Is there something broken? That's why the machine is not working. Or maybe another machine in the production line stopped working, and that's why the other machine. So long story short, you really have to add metadata to your industrial data. And that is super important in order to make data valuable for AI. And maybe just to finish off with my answer here, it's a bit of a long answer, but it's really important, I believe, and a lot of clients asking this question at the moment.
Yeah.
I think what is very important here is also, for example, working with SAP very closely. SAP is using Cumulocity for their IoT deployments, and they have embedded Cumulocity in their asset performance management system. And so it's a really close partnership. And what we are doing there is we are deploying what is called a medallion architecture. I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with that. It starts with bronze, silver, and gold. I really would recommend people utilizing this approach. It is really useful. You start in the bronze area with raw data, and then you move into more filtered, cleaned, augmented data with the silver one. And then what SAP is doing, they're actually giving us business relevant information to the data so that we calculate really the gold standard in that sense. And so we are overlaying this data with really business relevant information coming from an SAP environment, in this case, as an example. So the medallion architecture approach is really something I would recommend, especially thinking about AI-ready, AI-trainable data.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, comprehensive answer, which is great to get us started, I think. And as you say, it's a question which is very much current and coming out of customers a lot at the moment. So just kind of staying on the data theme for a minute, Johannes, I wanted to come to you and talk to you a little bit about edge data. So why does high quality edge data matter so much when it comes to industrial AI?
Yeah, it's really interesting. First of all, thank you very much for the joining this esteemed forum here. So this is very good, and it's really interesting as it relates to AI. I think the A word or the A letter is actually very important. If AI could do something, it would probably be of automation, because we have enough data to actually have insight, but AI needs to bring something else to it. So when I talk to people, it's really about what does AI really produce as an outcome? And I like what actually Bernd said earlier. When you overlay data, technical data with business data, I think that's where really for us in our engagements, for example, with smart warehousing use cases, with rail management, the question is always, what pain points are you going to address? What are the pain points? The pain points describe what is the outcome that you're trying to improve. So for us, when we relate to high quality data, let's say, for example, in a smart warehousing case that involves mobile forklifts, as an example, what you want to zero in on avoiding, improving safety, and increase asset utilization, so not damaging the assets. That's very important for how you select the data that you actually want to build an AI model against that actually absorbs the relevant data to improve itself. So I think the first thing is really understanding what you're trying to solve and be in dialogue with clients around the use case. That's actually how we go into these various segments. Secondly, I think once you get to the high quality data, you need to figure out how can you train the model with the relevant data only. We all deal with latency issues, bandwidth, form factor issues, to actually use the relevant data and go back and forth between cloud and edge. And what I find is what is the biggest challenge is on the edge side, particularly in the industrial environments for sure. How do you transport the knowledge back and bring it back out? So really automating the Autobahn in the right way is absolutely key. And I think this is where the challenge is. But the challenge gets better to solve when you define the business outcome and the pain point that you're trying to get an improvement from an AI model against. That's our experience.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Right, another key kind of topic around this issue is the unified namespace. But I think sometimes people are not necessarily 100% clear on exactly what that is and how it adds value and how it works. So Arlen, could you kind of give us a brief intro to unified namespace and how it changes how manufacturers leverage IoT for the AI scenarios that we were talking about?
Sure. Well, thanks, Hamish. Really, we have a very large pink elephant in the room, and that is the legacy machines, the infrastructure that we have to talk to.
Yeah.
And, we're looking at easily 35, 40 years of legacy equipment that we've got to address. So, 26 years ago, when Andy and I worked on that project for Phillips 66, we had to solve a problem, and that was getting more data over VSAT space segment. And that was really the genesis of where MQTT came from. And it was very interesting in that, we could just publish everything report by exception. But then we started getting that into the Ignition platform, and people like Walker Reynolds started looking at that, and they go, well, we could expand that because you have a topic that's hierarchical, and now you can add contextual data to it. And then over the course of about 5 or 6 years, all of a sudden we've got a name to that. It's called Unified Namespace. And that means that you can, from the edge, and the edge, you've got to look at the edge as a single source of truth, be able to get that into MQTT, and then be able to publish that in a hierarchical topic namespace. A lot of people follow ISA, but your company may have another way to do that. But ultimately, be able to land that data into a data cloud platform where you can look at a measurement, and to everybody's consensus here, I know where it came from, I know the context of it, I know the timestamp of it, and I can immediately start using that without writing 1,000 lines of Python code every time I want to take a look at that data. So ultimately, the unified namespace is getting everything into decoupled. Again, that's the beauty of MQTT. And on LinkedIn here a couple of weeks ago, I had one customer that put it very good, is that, hey, MQTT basically enabled machines to talk. Now with Industry 5.0, MCPs, model context protocols, can grab that data from MQTT, from the unified namespace, and actually do something with it to solve a problem. And again, AI is of no value if you don't know what you want the outcome to be.
Right, exactly, and that goes back to what we were saying earlier about outcome focus. And speaking of outcomes, I wanted to get a bit. Angela is here to enable us to really get practical, get into the weeds a bit in terms of what's actually happening, in a fast-moving beverage company like the one she runs. So, Angela, could you talk a little bit about how you're using AI to fuse different types of information, so retail, e-commerce, social signals, to guide your kind of R&D and innovation processes?
Yeah, so I think for smaller consumer product brands, right, the challenge is we're facing a market that's fast evolving. So if you just, I don't know whether everyone is on social media every day, right? I hope not, but if you're on there, you'll see the trend is changing, not just day-to-day base, it can change hour by hour. So, and that can really impact the demand of certain type of products. For us, we are compete in this functional beverage market space, which is fast growing, but on the other side, the change, the taste requirements, the demand from consumers is constantly evolving. And on the other side, challenge for smaller brands is we have limited budget, we have limited human resource. So how do you acquire those data and guide to your product developments? That's the challenge. But that now with the AI, many AI tools, we actually can comfortably face this challenge. I give you an example. So what we have done is really try to find a way to unify three signals from the market. Number one is your retailer's point of sales data. You try your best to collect that. And then number two is the marketplace reviews. There are many AI tools actually now these days are developed, right? You don't have to develop in-house. You can use to scrape data from different marketplace For example, Amazon has lots of review data you can look at. Even go to social media side. I think Reddit suddenly becomes really popular now, probably because all those AI search engine try to pull data from there, and then the social chatters. So basically, you have to, for example, TikTok, how the trend evolving. Again, you just have to find the right tool to scrape data from there. Now you have vast amount of data. What are you going to do with them? You really have to understand, like other experts are saying here, you need to understand what your own needs. So, for example, our brand, the Guardrails, is really clean ingredient, low sugar, and also we need to meet compliance requirements, right, with the FDA. So basically, you need to apply those and filter through the data, and then that will transfer the data into short formulation concepts with target attributes, meeting the label language requirements, right? And then there's, again, AI tools or online tools you can use to quickly test different prototypes that you are not even developed in your R&D space. Just kind of really everything is just in your computer, and test them and see which one can be the potential winner that you should spend time to develop them. There are lots of tools. I think Dragonfly AI is a really useful AI tool. Then there's Pigful. You can do really quick on-demand poll from real people, real target consumers you are kind of serving. So the win is really the cycle time. You basically go from emergent signal to a lab brief in weeks, not in months, right? That allows a small brand to compete effectively with large brands, right? So that's I think something hopefully I find useful for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Speed is always, and doesn't really matter what market right now. Speed is definitely becoming an increasingly important competitive advantage. There's no doubt about that. All right, thank you for that more practical insight there, Angela. So I don't think any of us want to pretend that this stuff is easy, right? So let's look at some of the challenges around this topic. Arlen, I wanted to maybe start with you, because I think, again, as a bit like unified namespace, that clarity and there is not always, people don't necessarily interpret things the same way. So what are the biggest misconceptions, as far as you're concerned, when it comes to real-time industrial data, and how can they be best addressed?
Well, let's start with ubiquitous Modbus. I mean, we've got to look at that. It was invented in 1978, and it's still the most used industrial protocol out there. So when we talk to a Modbus device, we get a register value, 40,001, and it's got a value of 23. Is that 23 degrees? Is that 23 pounds? We don't know what that is. So really, most of our customers are using MQTT at the edge to be able to bring raw register values in, give it engineering high, engineering low, scale it if you need to, give it a name, make sure you've got the timestamp in milliseconds, and then be able to publish that data into your infrastructure. Now, the other, I guess, my big pet peeve is that a lot of our equipment out there today, we get enumerations. So we've got a flow computer out in the field. We get an enumeration of 5. So now when I get that into the enterprise, what does that mean? So we don't have any idea of what these enumerations mean. So again, with this technology, we can take an enumeration, blow it out and say, well, actually enumeration 5 means that it's stainless steel, and be able to get that contextualized data into an operational system first and foremost, and then be able to get it to a data cloud platform. And we've got to remember that we've got to make it an operational system's got to be secure, reliable, scalable, first and foremost. If we try to jump and go from cloud to OT down, it never works. We've got to go from an OT infrastructure into, once it's ready, into a cloud infrastructure.
Okay, yeah. So, and you mentioned scaling there in your answer, and Bernd, I wanted to come to you to talk a little bit more about that. So what would you say are the biggest challenges the manufacturers face when it comes to scaling these AI-driven insights across multiple sites?
Let me, thanks for the question. Also, quick comment on the unified namespace from Alan, which I also follow very carefully, very closely, because it's an important initiative. However, I also see challenges with it, because at the definition at the unified namespace, it's a centralized approach, right? That means you have to have everything under control in order really to deploy this unified namespace naming convention, and then it's a PubSub kind of MQTT broker, often MQTT broker enabled environment. What I see is challenges with it. I foresee challenges because I do think a lot of environments are not centralized, coordinated, managed by a data team, a centralized team. I see more practical approaches with a federated approach, right? And there's just a general comment I wanted to make on the unified namespace. While I really like the idea, but I do see that we have very heterogeneous environments with different vendors, different machines, and to really implement that namespace will be a challenge. Also to maintain that going forward, if you replace things, if you change your production environment, etc. So that is just a general comment I wanted to do on the unified namespace. So I'm very focused on, and we in Cumulocity, on a decentralized environment where we use basically asset hierarchy similar to unified namespace, but really in a decentralized setup. To your question, what are the biggest challenges in really driving AI insights across multiple sites? Really, I liked actually the poll answers already. We saw already a couple of this, which are, I think, also here important, like the systems ITO systems are not really built for AI at the moment. That was one of the answers, I believe. Another one was the real-time contextual data missing. And I think these are the two highest respondents in the answer. And in addition to that, I do see a lot of positives as well, because when you think about what happened during the last 10, 15 years, with the arrival of cloud and data lakes, we had actually the opportunity to overcome data silos in terms of offloading data with, for example, packet file structure into a data lake, right? And that already helped a lot of manufacturers to overcome data silos in order to generate analytics insights. And nowadays, with the arrival of iceberg file structure, so meaning metadata added to the packet file structure, we see and data pipelines. I do see a lot of our clients nowadays using these technologies in order to overcome silos, create analytics, machine learning, AI. And then, of course, what is very important, but was also missing in the past, that in today's cloud edge hybrid setups, which is the most common one I face, at least in our customer base, and the back loop, so that you can read data in the right format, you enrich the data, you contextualize the data, and then you have a data warehouse environment, but then you can analyze it, and then you can actually go back and update your models. And that will happen more often than not, because the models require a continuous updating going forward. So the loop back into the edge environment is becoming super important, and it's a challenge because of all the data privacy and security issues we all know, and etc. But long story short, I do believe we do have technology-wise a good set of technologies and best practices to overcome this challenge. And I see also adoption, but maybe not as much as you would anticipate.
Okay. All right. And just on that data in the edge topic there, Johannes, could you talk a little bit about why manufacturers still struggle a lot with integrating those new data sources and AI models into edge systems?
Yeah, so I was thinking all along the lines when Alan and Arlen and Bernd were talking and reflecting on the challenges that we see basically. So first of all, I think the one topic that always stands out in IoT, let's call it the old version was IoT. Now we all talk about AI, but there's some really good analogies and everything. Is there's interoperability issues everywhere. Now you just have different footprints. You bring new machines into the ecosystem. You vary their purposes, their applications for what they're built, and with this ever-changing use of the machines and also the overall systems set up, you have varying footprints, and you try to manage them. Now, from a data point of view, I actually concur, with the observation. There's a mix between you need to have a centralized data architecture that actually brings the data together. But I actually am closer to Bernd's approach, where you say there's a federated element, because the problem is with the edge, it is actually where the action is supposed to happen. No, this is where the action is. And my observation is when we talk to people that sit in front of these data lakes, the data lake can lead to almost like a freeze. No? There's more discussion about who owns the data and for what purpose should it be extracted than there's actually value generated from that. So the key thing is when you try to bring decisions into the industrial environment, just as in any environment, I think sometimes what helps is also to look at other industries. We work in automotive for quite a bit. And the analogy I can find there is when you have a large automotive ecosystem where consumers like us drive cars, and you try to harvest their user experience, their data that they produce every day consistently to provide a better experience around your cars to somebody else, that is like the diverse ecosystem. So you try to figure out how, from an application perspective, do you collect data consistently, so that it doesn't break just because the platform A, the machine A, in this analogy, collects it differently than what you do. And the best thing I can think of is, again, you need to describe what are you after in the outcome, because just collecting data for data's sake and feeding it into an AI system is probably not good enough. You need to prove out what the AI model is supposed to do, and then come into play the latency and the form factors, because we're experimenting with our aicas Edge Suite, which is our platform to do this. How do we get the knowledge as quickly extracted from the edge side in a minimal way, the relevant data only, feed it into an AI loop, and bring this software, trained software, back into the edge? And it's not a perfect challenge, but we're trying to simulate that from software, data, AI loop, and we're getting the first good use cases out of that it actually works. But it's a challenge in diverse environments, so you need to really be close to the device.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. And let's just get the end user perspective again now from Angela. So obviously, smaller companies have a lot less data, and there's quite a lot of risks when it comes to building AI models for these kind of SMB brands. So Angela, what from your perspective is the most pragmatic way for these kind of companies like yours to bootstrap these useful AI models?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, any good AI models needs lots of data as good data as the good inputs. Then you need to give very clear directions, and you set your goal very clear, and potentially you can get really good outputs. So the challenge, obviously, for small brands is where do we get those data? I think instead of feeling like, oh gosh, I don't have that kind of budget to acquire data from all those data houses, why don't we just really focus on the model, proven model, whatever model you develop in-house? And the first step you should focus on, we believe, we test is fine-tune the proven models you already in-house with your small sets of data, but high signal data. And then after that, you can be just pick and choose, depends on your budget situation, your relationship with different retailers or syndicated, those database, pair that up with the data you get from retailers or syndicated database for the kind of, I'll call them the clean room analyst cohorts to answer practical questions you try to address. Mm-hmm. So for example, the question can be, what benefits resonate by regions if you are competing in different regions? What ingredients drive repeat purchase, right? Those questions can be practical, move needles of your day-to-day, sales operation. I would say be really careful with adding synthetic data to cover edge cases. unless you really validate with real outcomes. So because AI model can make lots of mistakes as well. And the third thing I would say, keep the goal really narrow. Remember, we need to be humble. We are small brands, so we're not here doing like 7 years planning, right? You want to make decision you can add quickly next quarter. You don't need a giant, beautiful model just to make yourself feel good. Just, so because along the way you can continue to fine tune the model. That's the way to go for small brands.
Fantastic, yeah, and honestly, I don't think anybody should be doing 7-year planning, no matter how big or small the company is. To be honest, it always reminds me of the example. No, I mean it's pointless, frankly. Much more than 12, 18 months out is already too vague, too unpredictable. It reminds me always of the example where car manufacturers tend to have a model cycle of 7 years, and in China it's more like 7 months. And if something doesn't work after 6 months, they just change the body and rebrand it and start selling it again as something else. And I mean, the speed of the difference is just incredible. Anyway, a bit of a digression there. Team, could I ask you to bring up the second poll question quickly, please? I'm not 100% sure if I'll be able to see it, but oh yeah, here it is. So it'd be great if everybody could just spend a few seconds doing that, and then we can see the results in the next few seconds or so. So we could have a quick look at the results. I'm not seeing them. I don't know if anybody else. Here they come. Here they are. So we've got definitely the decisive value seems to be that people are looking for better data, followed by faster time to solution. Scalability, as we've already been talking about. Efficiency and cost savings is the least important. So that's also quite interesting, I think. All right, fantastic. So again, guys, if you can just bear that in mind perhaps in what we discuss next. We're also going to have to speed up slightly, I think. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time to get to all our fantastic questions. All right, so let's have a look at. We've spoken about some challenges. Now let's have a look at some solutions. So, Johannes, if I could start with you, how can manufacturers design an architecture that connects AI at the edge with AI in the cloud to enable that continuous improvement, which everybody is looking for?
Yeah, so I think given the history, we originally, today we do various segments, including automotive, which once you work with automotive, it's too big. It overshadows everything else. But with our industrial clients, we always start with, you need to have some sort of a software management framework that's in place at the, I call it, device level. And because at the end of the day, you want to manage functionality in and out of this device doing something, and that applies to also how you extract data, and that then certainly also applies to how you bring back and forth AI algorithms and train those, which is very important. So from our perspective, that is where you really start. And what we're trying to design in our philosophy is with our, what we call our edge suite approach, is basically a round trip engineering approach. Because originally when we started was really about software in the device, then came data, and now comes AI. And I always like to say AI is just intelligent data management. Okay, that may be too simple, but in a way, like the challenge that was said earlier, you need better data. So how do you make better data that is the right data, extracted and bring them into a training? We do, for example, just as Angela does, we do source data, like thousands of data sets, and we train models on a vertical case-by-case basis. When we go into client engagements in an industry, we have a head start. We know where we start at least, and then utilize that to actually demo out how does this actually work in the software, data, and AI loop within the system. And we could even demonstrate that. But I think key is, again, for me, very important, a software architecture that allows data extraction and software updates, which are equal with AI algorithms, bits and bytes to be loaded back and forth, has to be fluid, has to be fast, and it also needs to encompass this very diverse machine and factory environment, which isn't any different than what other areas look like when you look at multiple device platforms that are running around on the roads or some other places, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that diversity, I think, is also what Arlen has been talking about, which is that there's a lot of legacy infrastructure there, legacy protocols, brownfield infrastructure. And this is not just an issue for manufacturing, it's also, I think, half the world's banking system, or more than half of it, still runs on software from the 1960s. So this is a very real problem and a very real challenge. Arlen, can you talk a bit about how to leverage compute platforms to integrate with that kind of legacy infrastructure?
Well, I've got one behind me here. That's an Opto 22 Epic, and I've got another one here. This is ABB has put MQTT spark plug in all of their new industrial devices. So again, that would be great. I mean, think about what the promise would be, and whether, I don't really care whether it's federated or UNS. It's the fact that, what if I can walk into a factory with my laptop with the right permissions, plug in, and in 10 seconds learn all of the equipment with all of my contextual data? That's the goal that we're going for. Yes, we're going to have to play the legacy game today with the equipment that you've got. And that's where devices like, you've got Moxie, you've got IO Logic, you've got Advantech, you've got Opto 22, you've got Phoenix Contact. So you have a plethora of edge devices that all work in being able to give you that interface, and also gives you the security. Remember, once you put an edge device in front of a legacy Modbus device, now you've got security in front of that device as well that we have to talk about. So you really start getting that infrastructure from 1970s Modbus devices to brand new Siemens PLCs, but yet try to get that into your MQTT definition, whether that's federated, whether that's UNS. It doesn't matter. You've got to focus on, and to the point that was made before, if you don't do that, you end up with a data swamp. I've seen too many good intentioned data lakes literally turn into data swamps.
Okay, yeah, that's not a pleasant scenario or mental image. Okay, fantastic, thank you. And Angela, so again, small business, limited resources, key application for AI, predictive quality control in your kind of industry, your kind of business. So what, from your perspective, is a kind of starter stack for a smaller business to deliver that?
Yeah, great question. That's again, product quality has enormous impact on a brand. First, if you don't pay attention to the product quality control, you can have really costly consequences. For example, in the extreme case, recall, right? And second, of course, you want to protect your brand trust among your target consumers. So it doesn't matter you are producing in-house or using co-packer. I think especially for many small brands, most likely you're using a co-packer, and we have very little leverage in hand. I mean, we produce ourselves, right? So we have full control. But when you're using a co-packer, the challenge is you feel like you're constantly bagging them to produce on time, right? You don't want to run out of product, get scolded by your retailers or nothing to sell. So you kind of don't know, you actually can find ways to control the brand quality, because small brands, most likely functional brand, you want to have clean ingredient, good taste, good texture, all those things. However, it's important for you to focus on the most important critical controlling points. So the first thing is, regardless you're running production or not, you need to understand what's the whole production process. What are the critical control points? Second is, well, you're not going to keep tagging that co-packers, even your own staff, like you have to look at everything. It's impossible. You have limit time, limit budget. So basically you just have to say, what are the data sets I need that's going to help me to monitor those critical control points? For example, you need to decide, is that filling temperature, pH breaks? Is that just whether the caps got screwed down, the cap torque cues, those kind of things? Is that the weight of each bottle, the temperature, all those things? So you need to decide what are those data are most relevant for your brand quality, right? And then ideally you can get data sets from the co-packers or from your own factory, and then you can feed those data into the AI and build this model so it will send you alert, right? Oh, something is out of control or is drifting kind of to your safe zone. You need to take action right away, or you need to let your co-packer know right away. I think that's what we need to focus on instead of blindly just, kind of, looking at everything. That's impossible. That's just impossible. It's really looking at what are the top critical control points, and then you kind of set this whole system up based on your budget and your headcounts.
I mean, Hamish, it's, if I may say that, it's really, I mean, Angela's response, maybe the conversation, it actually sounds often to me like I studied statistics early in my life. We have to be more statisticians to think about causal analysis, regression analysis in order to figure out how we train the AI system to do that, to provide the right answers in a sense. It's just interesting observations along the line. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. It's time to get our crystal balls out, guys. I want to look ahead a little bit. And if I could come to you, Johannes, first, how do you see time to solution evolving? So what's going to shorten the gap between AI pilots, which I think a lot of manufacturers are already running, and scale production over the next, I know we said we shouldn't plan too far ahead, but let's say over the next 3 to 5 years.
So if I could be really, totally provocative, I would say we can do all the LLMs that we want with the ever-increasing data architecture. The question is, what result and difference does it make at the operational level? I think folks are looking for operational improvements through AI where it matters, in a daily life, in the production environment, in whatever environment that is. So I think what is important to that is our ability to collect and process the right data in an efficient and effective way, and make it available for AI modeling, and be able to somehow figure out a speed element or an ease of use element of getting this data back into where your device makes the decisions. So, and I think the word decision is really important, because if it is, a better decision cannot be made where the edge operates. I think you're going to have a hard time justifying all that you're doing with the data. No? It's just like how you justify a data lake. Arlene called it a data swamp. That's a problem. If you only regard it as a data swamp, that's a real problem for your investment onto the data side. So that proof has to be delivered. And I think if we concentrate on how we improve that process and make it seamless and easy, and it provides value, measurable value, that will make a difference for AI modeling from an edge point of view in particular.
Okay, fantastic. So just to mix it up a bit, Angela, if I could come to you next, not fair that you always coming in the last question. How will AI-assisted lifecycle analysis help brands like yours to make packaging decisions? Thinking about having to balance all these different needs like sustainability, compliance, and consumer impact. How do you see it evolving in your business?
Yeah. Packaging materials and how you package for your product is a big factor, impacting brand perception, quality, and then even your shelf sales velocity, everything, right? So I think for us, the most important thing is treat packaging like a set of scenarios, not a debate. So obviously, for beverages, the choice can be, for example, PET bottles, glass bottles, or cans. And so each of those scenarios, you need to have a data card, right? And then you can, if you have the capability, you can build an AI assistant, the LCA, that's the life cycle assessment sandbox, where you kind of input each of those options in this sandbox, and you can do some, kind of analysis. So, for example, you can basically compare materials and weight, recyclable, level, recycled content, line efficiency. So, obviously a different bottle type who's going to have different impact on your line efficiency, breakage returns, right? Those are data you actually can collect if you don't have them in-house. There are lots of data in the market space you can collect. Pallet densities, right? That's important in terms of how you pack them and ship them out, and line mails, all those things. And then you also want that model scores the CO2 emission kind of pre-functional union data, because now this day sustainability is important, right? It's important for us, for manufacturer, but it's also important, especially important for consumers. And water uses, the end of life cycles, all those things. So basically, this is our data cards. You need to basically use your AI-based this tool to help you to analyze them and compare them. Because obviously the beauty of AI, you can get this kind of analytical work done much faster. You don't have to hire like outside consulting firms to do this for you anymore. And then I would say the other thing is pair that with sell-through and damage risk. You got to see what's the impact on your top line and bottom line. So I think hopefully that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Angela. So we are kind of starting to run out of time, but I want to get Bernd and Arlen's input on this before we go to a couple of questions. I think we've covered some of the questions already and some of the answers that you've already given, but nevertheless, I'd like to get to a couple at the end. But if I can just come to you two before we do that. So Bernd, looking at the next technology supercycle, why do you see connectedness as the foundation of that? And maybe just very briefly explain how Cumulocity is helping manufacturers capitalize on that.
Yes, I always start smiling when I hear that term, technology supercycle. It's a very American, US type of a terminology, technology supercycle. But it actually, it really means that we see various technologies which are, overlapping and creating a positive feedback loop. For example, you have AI obviously driving a lot of demand for connectedness with IoT tools, because you need to connect your assets. You need to sync in a real-time, end-to-end way in order to enhance and automate, like Johannes mentioned, automation, return on investment. So fundamentally, what we are seeing is with AI, with IoT, with advanced sensors, but also robotics or biotechnology, they all actually converge and in sitting, feedbacking each other and in a positive way. So we have almost like a flywheel happening at the moment, right? And that is creating an enormous technology demand for us. This is very good news. Being in the technology area where we are in the industrial AIoT area. And I think what is now happening, I think what we need to realize that it is so profound that a lot of, especially US companies and US analysts, I'm not sure if Europeans think like in the same way, but they really think it's like the invention of the internet, is like the industrial evolution, what is happening with the AI-driven automation. And I think the best example is robotics and AI. Think about robotics, human-like robotics. Human need. If you think now the positive impact AI is having to that industry is enormous. It's really enormous. And so that's what I mean. Robotics as a technology is already advancing a lot, but now the AI comes into the robotics environment, drives a massive amount of growth in that area. And the same with IoT. AI brings opportunities to automate and drive efficiencies on the edge as well as on the cloud level. So and that's driving really a lot of companies to rethink their strategy, how to connect. And they actually, when I'm using the word connectedness, I really mean a bi-directional way of connecting, not just a VPN connection as we used to have in the old days, right? I really mean an TCP IP type of MQTT used as a protocol, often in modern ways. So it's a connection where you can read and execute and operate machines downwards, really bidirectional. And I think that's a very important part of the deployment of the architecture people have to implement.
Fantastic. All right, and I'm going to just pass on now to Arlen to just give us a quick insight into MQTT and Spark Club in terms of how they're enabling the factory brain and how this is all going to evolve in the future, in from an AI perspective, Arlen.
Well, I can't. I mean, it's grown so fast here. I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, it is amazing the number of people leveraging this technology. So you asked me, where's it going to go? I think we're going to get more and more, in devices, machines that talk MQTT, whatever flavor they're going to talk, because it's all about connecting machines to infrastructure, not to applications.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we're gonna have time for a couple of questions. This may actually be one for you, also, Arlen. What essential security framework or controls should be implemented to safeguard a unified namespace architecture across, edge OT networks, cloud infrastructure? Do you have a view on that?
Well, remember, one of the reasons that MQTT has been so popular is that basically, if you're looking at it from an edge perspective, it's zero trust security. So fortunately, when Andy and I made the decision, your edge devices make an outbound connection. Now remember, MQTT sits on top of TCP. So your security that you're leveraging for MQTT is the latest TCP technology. So today's TLS, tomorrow it could be something different. So all of this infrastructure we've been talking about with MQTT, it's all protected at the broker. So all of your factory equipment, all of your connections into the cloud, there are no ports open in the factory.
Okay. All right. What else do we have here? So we were talking about unified namespace there. Ernest Miller would like a little bit more detail on the federated approach. Could you just explain that in a little bit more detail?
Maybe I start quickly on that when I mentioned it. I think Arlen also, obviously the unified namespace is a naming convention in a sense. It's not a technology, it's not a system, right? In a sense, right? You can deploy it on many different ways, and most common way is MQTT. And I think the current environment which is widely used is a data mesh. It's called data mesh architecture. It's actually a federated way, and in the various subsystems, you can use actually unified namespace as your data schema, or you use others like in our case, we often use a JSON description, so document-oriented JSON on top of MQTT, and you have many different ways. And but I think the best way to look into this architecture and really thinking about the federated deployment might be a data mesh architecture. If you just look for that, you will find a lot of information.
Okay, fantastic. All right, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. Everybody who's asked a question who didn't get it answered, don't worry. The IoT World team will get back to you to get your question answered if you don't feel it was covered in the content. So it just remains for me to thank very much our panelists for your great insights, your knowledge. Thanks again to the sponsors of this session, Cirrus Link and aicas. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this at all. So your support ensures that we deliver as much valuable to our audience as possible. Thanks obviously to our attendees for listening in and all your great questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to all of them, but it was a very in-depth discussion and I hope you found it valuable. It's now time to move to the next session, which is Predict, Prevent, Optimize, Real Results from Augmented Industrial Data, sponsored by Influx Data today. I will see you in 2 sessions' time for session 5. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much.